That's the idea. Hello there. Welcome to Behind the Scenes of AV Rant, episode number 651. This is the live recording session. You're watching the behind the scenes. Apologies for anyone who was hoping we would have things updated by now. Nope, didn't have time, haven't got it worked out. Still the old format, but hey, it's behind the scenes. That's the way it goes. You won't be able to see the photos that we're talking about during the podcast, but if you click show more in the show description below this video, there's a link that'll take you over to Flickr. Photos shown in this pictures shown in this episode, it'll say they're over at Flickr, and so you can follow along that way. And yeah, you've been warned. This is just the live recording session, so who knows? Things might drop out, or video or audio quality might be bad. That's what you get when it's live. All right, that's the preamble. Tom can start when he pleases.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I gotta remember to do this too. Is that gonna mess stuff up? Yeah, just leave it alone, Tom. Don't press any button. All right. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and not this week. Not next week, but the week after, the week of July the 22nd. Going to have a special guest co-host, Richard Gunther from Home On podcast, also the Entertainment 2.0 podcast. He is a DIY home automation expert. So if you have any questions about home automation, including integrating it with home theater or just home automation in general, please send your questions in. You've got a couple of weeks to send them in because I'm going to be here with Richard to talk about that subject for sure. So yeah, want to mention that right away so people don't miss it somewhere into our preamble here.
Unless they immediately fast forward.
Yep, they might. Well, I'll mention it again in the middle and at the end. Somehow people will catch it, I hope.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Very excited.
So you, Tom, you are away next week?
Yeah, I leave on Sunday.
Okay.
And I don't come back until the two more Saturdays. The second Saturday.
Because when you said the last 2 weeks of July, I was like, is that the last 2 full weeks of July?
No,
or
the last 2.
Okay, so you'll be back for the 29th/30th of July.
Is that? Yes.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So I'll have to scrounge up a guest co-host for next week. That's fine. That'll be doable. We'll try to work out this using Skype and OBS stuff because
I don't know how I'm going to be able to publish the podcast while I'm gone. I don't think my wife's letting me take the computer.
Okay,
that's part of the deal.
Well, maybe I'll just sign up for my own Libsyn and throw it up there or something.
Yeah, and then
it'll work.
Whatever.
And then you can rehost it when you get back. There, done, solved. On the fly on the podcast. Look at us solving.
Look at us problem solving.
It's what we do for us and you. Ha ha ha.
I did not sleep well last night, so I get to be cranky, I guess.
But you got coffee.
I do have coffee. I haven't really sipped it yet.
On the floor.
I need it.
When you looked down there for a long while before we started the podcast, I was like, did he spill his coffee?
I didn't spill it. I just want to make sure it's within reach.
Yes.
That's all. All right, this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. It's a good way to get in contact with us. YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly. Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. One of these days, I will use Twitter again. I go there and
you post the podcast there.
Everybody's so angry.
Yes, they are.
They're so angry over there. It's just I feel like it's a shouting match, and I didn't even get warmed up. I don't mind shouting.
All
right, let's thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leave us a PayPal donation. And for that, we want to thank Johan, Nick, and Chad. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, Johan, Nick, Chad, thank you all very much for those donations. We appreciate it.
We also want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com, including James C., who let us know that he was one of our patrons.
That's right. It's patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. It's an automatic monthly donation that you set up for any amount between $1 minimum and who knows what the maximum is. No one has ever found it. It's infinity. So if you'd like to sign up to think of it as a voluntary subscription to the podcast, that would be much appreciated. James, thanks for being one of our patrons, and thanks very much to our 81 other patrons as well.
And House of Cards James, who's also our patron supporter guy. also sent us Amazon gift cards to once again have a trifecta of AV Rant support. So we got a gift cards, which was great, and I
Yes.
think I used it immediately on razor blades. That's I needed them.
Very good. I haven't put mine to use yet, but I'm sure I'll find something. I am shopping at Amazon these days. So thanks very much, James. We appreciate all the support that you give to us. It's really nice of you. And you know what? In case anyone fast forward and is like, hey, what's going on? I want to mention once again, July 22nd, or the week of July 22nd.
Well,
probably
just
record
name the
on July
podcast.
24th.
Send in your questions or whatever.
Yes, send in your home automation questions. Going to be here with Richard Gunther from the Home On podcast. He's going to be my guest co-host that
no
week.
Clickbait this week.
I guess not.
No Tom clickbait.
So yeah, July 24th, we'll be recording. Get in your home automation questions to us, please.
All right. So in the news from Jay and Carl, not Jay and Silent Bob, different Jay. Spears and Munsell released their new UHD HDR benchmark test sticks, which would be Ultra HD high dynamic range test benchmark test sticks. So it's $40. Right. That's not that bad. $40 is actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah, well, they famously had their HD benchmark on Blu-ray. People have been awaiting their Ultra HD and HDR benchmark on Ultra HD Blu-ray, so that's out now. Now, do be warned, if you're a beginner, this is not for you.
No.
There are no instructions.
Nope.
This does not hold your hand in any way. It does not give you a wizard or a tutorial or anything. It's just like a bunch of test patterns and test video for you to evaluate the screen, mostly using measurement equipment. So it's, it's for professionals and enthusiasts who already know what these test patterns are for and how to use them. It is not an instructional video at all. So just to be aware of that.
But it exists.
It does.
So there you go. LG 65-inch R9 rollable OLED TV, which Rob insists should be called a ROLED instead of an OLED.
It is an OLED. It is an organic light emitting diode display. But when it rolls, don't you think it should be called a ROLED? I think it should.
OLED. Yeah, I really think this is it, man. I think we're going to get away from projectors. We're going to have fixed frame, the things you stick to the wall with the pixel density,
modules,
and then we're going to have rollable OLEDs. That's going to be it. I think that's
I wouldn't mind. I'm down for all of that.
I want to have my entire walls covered in panels that have pixels in it, so that when my wife or anybody just says, "Oh, let's whatever." Then of course, some kid's going to bounce a ball against the wall and break it, but whatever. It needs to be highly protectable.
You can live like the guy in Black Mirror.
Exactly. I do. Except for you have to watch the commercials.
It costs you money to not watch the commercials. I love that. That is so true.
So YouTube. That is exactly the way YouTube is right now. Anyways, they started showing that for sale in the UK. So 65-inch rollable OLED. Just think of it won't be burn-in. It'll be creases or something. I don't know. List price is £59,999.
Yeah. The only price that's been listed has been in the UK, so it's British pounds, 59,999 of them.
Yeah. That's a lot of pounds.
Now, we predicted, when they announced this thing, you and I made predictions on the price. I have no recollection of what prices we guessed.
No.
So if anybody out there remembers what the heck we said or is willing to go back through however many episodes to find it.
60 does seem high for...
that's two 88-inch 8K OLEDs. Because, the thing is, at the moment, if you look up TV prices, when they're listed in British pounds, it's basically 1-to-1 for US dollars. It seems as though it's so $60,000 US dollars seems like it's the likely price. The 8K 88-inch OLED is $30,000. You could buy two 88 inches for the price of one 65 rollable one. But of course, you're buying it because it's the rollable thing and it's the newest, and that's why you're getting it and paying that price. But $60,000, wow!
I want to see it. Is there this video of it working?
Yeah, there's video of it rolling. Yeah,
back from the CES. Edge like? Is there a bezel?
Very thin. Yeah, so it's basically made up of thin horizontal metal slats on the back.
Oh, okay.
With kind of a scissor mechanic
right.
And so that lifts it out of its case.
I get it.
That's sort of the mechanism of how it works.
I still think $60,000 is about $30,000 too much for
that's a lot. I think I guessed 45 or something like that, but I don't recall exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a new Sony flagship Ultra HD Blu-ray player, the UBP X1100ES. It's $600. It doesn't do HDR10 plus because why would a flagship do all the things? It technically does Dolby Vision, but you have to turn it on manually, which at which point everything, even DVDs, come out as Dolby Vision. Nailed it. Which, if you use it to do HDR to SDR conversion, there's no way to retain the DCI P3 color, and its Netflix app doesn't support Atmos for less of a flagship and more of an overpriced not flagship.
More of an X700 thrown into a more expensive case. It doesn't have 7.1 analog audio outputs either. So I'm like, how is this a flagship? And how is Sony still putting out Dolby Vision players that cannot automatically detect when the disc is a Dolby Vision disc?
How did they come up with Dolby Vision? I mean, isn't they like one of the...
no, Dolby came up with Dolby Vision.
But I mean, aren't they one of the early adopters of Dolby Vision?
Yeah, they were fairly early, although they had the messed up version that required everyone out there to put out new firmware updates because it had to be player-led Dolby Vision as opposed to display-led Dolby Vision. But no, anyway, I can see no reasonable, justification for buying this thing. Makes no sense. It's disappointing. Right. There you go. It looks like Panasonic is like the only reasonable Ultra HD Blu-ray player brand to buy at this point. And if you want the HDR optimizer, you have to go to the UB820 or the flagship UB9000. And then now the UB450 has hit the market, although seemingly not in the United States. Interestingly, it's available in Canada. So hey. I guess come across the border and go that way for once. But yeah, the UB450 is the less expensive model. It's like $300, but it doesn't have the HDR optimizer.
This is all tariff related, I think. That's why we're not.
So it has HDR10 plus and Dolby Vision support in the UB450 from Panasonic, though. So if you want a player that actually handles those things correctly, there's your option.
All right, Jonathan says we got him laughing last week when we tried to figure out how to pronounce the name he had given his home theater, the Seaden.
That's what it looks like. Seaden. I would call that Seaden.
Anyways, he's a Seattle Seahawks fan, so it's the Sea Den, but like a lion's den, but for Seahawks.
The Sea Den.
It's still Seaden.
I mean, it should have had a dash in there if that's how it's pronounced.
Well, you don't have to have a dash if you don't want to.
Or intercapped.
Oh, right. You could capitalize the den part.
You could capitalize the D. In any case, we're still calling it the Seaden. That's what you get, Jonathan.
That's good.
It's a very nice theater.
It's a very nice theater. I'm still iffy on the name. In any case, he's fully on board for adding French doors to close off the room. And while he appreciates us suggesting a larger main TV, he actually started off with a 75-inch, but found it too overwhelming and purposely downgraded to a 65-inch. Have you ever thought about a rollable OLED?
That's right. It is the same size.
This is perfect for your Seaden. Which he finds more comfortable. The 65 inch is more comfortable than the 75. Lastly, he'd just like to make absolutely sure that a PC 2000, SVS PC 2000 will play nicely with existing Rhythmic LV12F. We weren't suggesting that he needs to buy two entirely new subwoofers, correct? That is correct.
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, technically speaking, the PC2000 has more output headroom than you need for your room size. Right. We were suggesting it for the form factor so that you don't have something sharp to bang into when you come through your door.
And
the cylinder will fit nicely in there. Fit nicely in your corner there. So, the PC2000, if you were in a larger room where the PC2000 were like at its absolute max output, then the LV12F from Rhythmic wouldn't quite be able to keep up. The LV12F is very, very comparable to a PB1000 in terms of maximum output and extension. But in your room size, it's absolutely no concern. Yeah. And we like the form factor of the cylinder.
So it's like 1 or 2 hertz at the very, very bottom of the PC2000 is playing that the LV, whatever 12F isn't playing, but
maybe.
Who cares?
Or the LV12 is just it's just playing them quieter.
Right.
No, they'll play perfectly well together.
John says back on episode 638. What episode are we on now?
651 we're up to now.
Okay, right. Yeah, we told John that his 9.5 foot seating distance, he should get a projector instead of a 65-inch flat panel. That sounds like us. Mm-hmm. He worked out that a 92-inch screen would fit nicely, and he got his wife on board when the project came with promises to do some fixes they'd be moneyed on and freshly paint the room. He took his time, and now he's happy to share the results with many hours of viewing ahead. So it's a very nice room. He's got some posters.
So this is the before images. If you're watching on YouTube here, this is when he had his small flat panel. He's like, I'd like to get a bigger flat panel, and back of the room was there, and it was painted this kind of, what is that, kind of a beigey color on the walls. But now we're switching over to now, and 92-inch screen. It looks like gray colored walls now. Yeah. That would have been my recommendation.
Everybody's doing gray.
But the room's all spiffied up, and he's put a cable raceway on the back there to cover the cables that have gone up the back wall to feed into his projector, which he has ceiling mounted up at the back of the room there. And when the lights go out, it is all image. It's just all image up at the front there. Very nice.
Very nice. Kind of feel like those.
And he apparently likes Captain America because he has multiple Captain America shields.
Yeah. I kind of wish those gouges were a little bit off that back wall, and maybe there was a sound absorber behind your head, but whatever.
You could turn those posters into sound absorbers, printed sound absorbers on the back wall.
Let's just
keep
talk about
spending his money.
My parents, I've been talking about their room to them since they got it, basically, since they made the upgrades to their house. It's all tile, hard pictures everywhere, no absorption anywhere. There's a rug, and that's about it. A rug in the center. And I'm like, they're like, oh, we can't, they've always got their subtitles on. I'm like, you got the subtitles on because you can't understand the dialogue. They're like, I know. I'm like, I know it's because we're old. I'm like, no, it's because your room sucks. You've got your speakers on the floor. The tweeters are firing into your shins. Okay. The room is a highly reflective room, so you could whatever. So I've been saying this forever, right? So what happens this last week? I go up to my parents' house. My parents are like, "Oh, we found these foam things on Amazon. We're going to think about getting those to help with the room." Like,
is this not what I do? Asks Tom.
That is literally the words I said. I was like, it's almost like somebody who's an AV expert. It's almost like, well, that's what you told us to get. I'm like, no, I told you to ask me, and I will tell you what to get. So I'm like, get off of Amazon, go over to Geek. Find. They're looking at like anything else. My parents, I think most people are like this. My wife tried to do the same thing. We have a house up in Jacksonville that we're trying to sell. So they were like, making some changes to the carpeting or to the flooring and to the wall color and stuff like that. They're like, which flooring do you want to go with? I'm like, how the hell do I know? You're sending me an image on a computer. I mean, it's not even, I don't even know what the lighting was like on the original images. I don't know what my settings are compared to what your settings are. I mean, I have no idea. I can't look at this and tell anything. Well, my parents are looking at the Gulf for the main stuff. Like, that's not the right color. You don't know. You don't know. On
your laptop screen, which I'm sure has been calibrated.
Oh, absolutely.
Their son is Tom.
Yes.
Being facetious there.
I am actually their son. Yes, that's not
that part is true. No, I'm just saying assuming that their laptop screen would have been calibrated because it's you.
Anyhow, so but it's like. Then I was at a reception the other day, and there was 5 people around a projector trying to get it to hook into a laptop, and I'm like family with all these people. I'm looking over, and I'm like, it's almost like somebody who could do this for you in 2 seconds, but. No, you guys just go up there. You all knock it out. Doing great. Nailing it. All right, let's get to the questions. Adam's living room is roughly 17 by 17 by 8, but it has 2 openings at the back to a hallway and to his kitchen. He's got a 5.1.2 sub using a Period Veris Grand bookshelf left to right and center up front with a pair of Veris Forte satellite surrounds, that sounds familiar, and a pair of Intimus 4B mounted up high on his side walls and angled down his top middles. It's all powered by a Denon X3400H, and its display is 65-inch C8 OLED. Have you ever thought about getting a rollable one? Only 60,000. It's only 60,000.
We should mention, in case anyone is, it's $60,000, so they're not seriously considering it. But like, for example, I'll go ahead and show the image that he sent in, Adam. Now, his screen is up fairly high, and so in case anyone is thinking you could mount that rollable OLED to your ceiling and have it roll down, nope, they won't let you do that on this version. It will not come down and invert the image for you. Now, why they couldn't fix that in, say, a firmware update that just rotates the image 180 degrees, because multiple people asked them at CES if that's something you could do, but they're like, no, this is only designed to roll upward. So, I mean, there's probably more to it than just flip it. There's probably like mechanical reasons why the rollable OLED doesn't roll down.
Why? I mean, how that's not a firmware fix.
Enough people asked them immediately that I am sure they must be working on that for the next iteration. But don't go spending your $60,000 today thinking that you can roll your OLED down from the ceiling. That's a public service announcement.
I'm gonna have an OLED and then another OLED that rolls down in front of the OLED. That's what I want.
You'll get like a 55-inch OLED for your HD TV and then a 65-inch OLED that rolls down in front of it for your movies.
Right.
Because that's enough of a size difference.
There you go.
You'll have to wait for the 48-inch so that it's enough of a size difference.
All right. So the whole setup is shifted to the left of his room with one forward-facing couch and one sideways-facing couch on the left. He has several bookcases to the front and left side, and a credenza behind the seats. I don't know what a credenza is. And is that like a shelf or something?
I mean, like a credenza is often what you would put a TV on. It's like one of those low shelving units, and then so it's not like floor to ceiling, right? It's
got a large table on the right with a single SVS PB1000 sub underneath the table. It's labeled a dining room table.
That's what it's labeled in his diagram.
So that's near the front right corner of his wall. So everything's to the left. Okay, yes. Everything's to the left. He's got, and it's all very tight. So there's not a ton of room here, but whatever.
Nice looking setup in his photo, though.
Yeah, it is. It does. From what I can see, he only took a picture of the screen.
Yes,
it works. So when he talked to SVS and described his room in full to them, they said that his PP1000 is underpowered. That is true. If you had closed off this room, it would probably be fine. 17 by 17 by 8, it'd be fine. But it's open to the rest of the place. But he says he never listens at full reference volume, and he thinks the bass sounds very good. It's deep, clear, and plenty loud for his listening levels, and the bombs and gunshots and whatnot definitely go boom. He wouldn't call it a visceral, physical experience, but he assumes he would need to turn up the volume level to get that, regardless of which subwoofer model he's using, right? No. A little bit. I mean, you don't have to have it. You don't have to have that full reference volume to get that visceral feeling. I mean,
I guess. I mean, the really low stuff, then that is more than just turning up the volume on your current sub. But the kick you in the chest between 40 and 60 hertz stuff, that should be. I mean, that would be a matter of turning up the volume to get more kick in your chest. Yeah.
So he asked us, you really need to upgrade a subwoofer. What he's worried about is whether he is potentially missing some sounds or effects that he ought to be hearing, but his PP1000 cannot deliver. He could theoretically fit a sub as large as a PP3000 under the table on the right, but would it be worth it? Is his PP1000 in fact underpowered for his room? It is in fact underpowered for your room. But do you need a bigger, larger sub? And I'm not 100% on board with you upgrading the sub for this reason.
In this scenario, as you've described, that is highly questionable whether upgrading to just a sub that can play louder and yes, maybe a couple of hertz lower. Right. Would you really be getting anything out of that? I mean, okay, so he could be using Odyssey Dynamic EQ right now.
Sure.
I don't know if you are, but you probably should be, because it's an X3400H, so you have it.
Got it. Yep.
So Odyssey Dynamic EQ should be making it so that even though you are always listening at below reference volume, all of the bass should be audible, not necessarily, fully visceral, physical feeling to it, but audible, right. Including stuff right down to 20 hertz. Now, could some of the very lowest below 25 hertz stuff just, no matter what Dynamic EQ is doing, no matter how loud you turn up the sub, it's just getting gobbled up by the open room size and you're not quite hearing that lowest half octave of bass? I guess that's theoretically possible.
Well, I mean, I guess go to the movie theaters. I mean, that's just really what I'm saying. I mean, go to IMAX. Go watch a movie in IMAX and then go home and watch it at home. That's what you're missing. I mean, as far as the
but I mean that is largely just a matter of sheer volume.
They've got, but in order to get all of that visceral effect that you're looking at for, you'd have to have the volume near that loud. I mean, we were watching Oh, we watched Bumblebee this week, which, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, fantastic movie.
Oh, good.
Holy crap. Why didn't they make that one to begin with? Oh, yeah,
Because Michael Bay. Yes.
All right. So, anyhow, great movie. My wife
Yeah.
loved it. My kids immediately ran out of the room. My youngest 9-year-old ran out of the room, ran to his room, found some Transformers, and started playing with them. I'm like, this is how you sell toys.
This is, yeah. You think that would sell toys if that's the reaction?
Oh, my God. Great movie. Anyways, but it absolutely 100% shook this couch in here. And I mean, that wasn't at a full reference volume, but that was, loud.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we have to say this is that if you're never listening at reference volume, then no matter what sub you have, you're technically missing a little bit of something, right? I mean, there's no way around that.
Right.
There's just certain sounds that have been requested at a certain level that you are not ever playing them back at that level. But would you be hearing, if not hearing all the bass you're supposed to hear? And I mean, essentially, yes, right? Could there possibly be maybe like 20, 21, 22 hertz that's not quite perceptible? I don't want to put him into that frame of mind. You know
we don't know. He is almost certainly missing some bass in this room simply because the room itself, he's got a single sub non-optimally placed underneath the table. The room's going to have some sort of dip someplace in there that he's missing out at. Taking a different sub and putting it in the exact same spot clear that up? Nope. Most certainly not. So, but it may make it more obvious of what his problem was, and then he could, adjust. But
I mean, bottom line, given the room restrictions, I am not eager to tell you to upgrade your sub, Adam. I think the sub that you have is capable of playing all the frequencies. No, not at full reference volume in your open room size. SVS is correct. It is underpowered in that sense.
Whenever somebody says that they don't listen to full reference volume, I'm a little hesitant to believe them. In this case, I am taking them at the word. But a lot of times, I think people are like, "Oh, I never get it up past -10." I'm like, well, -10 most of the cases is basically full reference volume. For the
it's not really true, but
well, I mean, depending on the mix on it, sometimes they mix those things so hot that you're.
These days they're usually mixing under. These days at full reference volume, it's usually 75 average. So
so I don't know. So in this case, I'm taking
neither of us is like totally telling you that you should upgrade your sub. I mean, if you got money burning a hole in your pocket, okay, but neither of us is like, yeah, you should.
I'll put it this way: I don't think you're going to notice a difference. I think if you put a PC 4000 down there, or PB 4000 down there, you would not really notice the difference.
Agreed.
So he says he isn't sure his top middle speakers are really doing very much. As mentioned, they are Intimus 4B and a very small bookshelf speakers mounted up high on the side walls and actually a little bit in front of his primary seat. With upgrading receivers so that he can have 4 overhead speakers make a big difference. No.
I wouldn't call it big. It would make a difference. I wouldn't call it big.
If the problem is the size of the speakers and the placement, changing the size of the speaker and the placement would be cheaper than buying a new. Because you're going to have to buy new speakers anyways.
Yeah, he's getting no forward to back movement from those overhead channels. So I mean that would be the thing. But I mean that's we're talking a new receiver and a new pair of speakers, and most likely moving the speakers he already has so that they're properly in front or behind of his seat, and then adding that other additional pair of speakers in the opposite location wherever he moves these current ones. So I mean that's a significant amount. Although if you were like, I do have this money, I was thinking it either goes toward an upgraded sub or a new AV receiver. I mean, in this instance, I could probably get more on board with the new AV receiver and having 4 overhead speakers. That's just me. Tom doesn't look super keen on that.
I just saved the money for something else. Just get a car or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think you would get more difference out of having 4 overheads properly positioned in front and behind than you would out of a subwoofer upgrade, Adam. If that's the scenario.
Yeah, I suppose. So do we have any general comments or thoughts about his setup to further improve it? I mean, I've only got one picture to go on here, and it's very tight.
And the diagram.
it's hard to see where your speakers are placed, your front, left, and right speakers. It looks like they're right at the front of your.
Well, the front, left, and right are directly to the sides of his screen on top
But
of
I'm
the
sorry,
TV stand.
how far forward they are on that TV stand. It looks like they're right at the edge, which is where they should be. So that would be the first thing I would look at.
And the center is definitely in front of, proud of that that TV stand. So all of that looks good.
It does look like it's angled up a little bit, so that's good there too. There's an ottoman.
It's on some isolation feet. Now, I would put some isolation foam or something underneath your front, left, and right speakers too. They look like they're sitting directly on the top of that table, whereas your center clearly has some little foamies under it. So a few little more foamies or some mouse pads under your front, left, and right speakers. I would do that.
Right.
That's cheap and easy. I mean, you got diffusion because you got bookcases all over the place.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Good. You got a rug, so that's already
doesn't really
good.
seem like he's got a whole lot of places that he can put absorption if he really wanted to. So
there's no convenient place to put a second sub in here, and it's a wide open configuration, so that'd be tricky. Anyway, yeah,
I think you're all right.
Yeah,
it's fine. Save your money.
You're doing good.
Josh has an AV gear closet. He's got a Denon X6300H receiver for his upstairs system and a second AV receiver for his downstairs system. He also has many other components: a cable modem, a router, or router, I guess, if you're Rob, 3 game systems, a TiVo Bolt, a TiVo Bolt Mini, a monolith amp, Dayton distribution amp, and a media PC. They're all rack mounted and all in the same electrical circuit. A while back, there was a bad thunderstorm in this area, but the only thing that got fried in this whole equipment closet was a Denon X4200W receiver he was using to power his downstairs system. He was only guessing, but he figured the surge got in through the coax TV cable. It's a likely source. At the time, the coax was plugged directly into his TiVo Bolt, which was then plugged into his receiver via HDMI. And since it was the HDMI board on his X4200W that got fried and nothing else, he figured it must have been the electrical path. Not necessarily, but probably. So you got a Furman PST-8D power conditioner, which offers a protected coax splitter. Now his cable TV coax wire plugs into the Furman power conditioner. The Furman then feeds the coax to his cable modem and his TiVo Bolt. And to further isolate the coax from his AV receiver, he uses a fiber optic HDMI cable to connect his TiVo Bolt to the AV receiver that replaced his fried X4200W, the X3400H. It's a lot of numbers and stuff.
It is.
Anyway, in the end, he had another bad thunderstorm recently, and now his brand new X3400H fried. Nothing else. So he did plug the 3400H into the same Furman power conditioner as the coax cable TV cable. So was that the problem? No. It just seems so odd that nothing else is getting fried, only the downstairs AV receiver. If the surge is coming in via the cable TV coax and the Furman power conditioner wasn't enough to stop it, then why didn't his cable modem or his TiVo Bolt fry? And he was correct to think that the fiber optic HDMI cable ought to electrically isolate his TiVo Bolt from the AV receiver. Anything we could suggest to help? Well, are you okay, so there is other gear that is not in this closet that is plugged into gear that is in this closet.
I'm not. I mean, it sounds like everything is in this closet.
I mean, the displays aren't. The subwoofers
the displays
aren't.
are not. The displays are not. Yeah.
So
I mean, nothing is frying except for this AV receiver. It's the only thing that has fried twice now.
Right.
And the first time it wasn't plugged into the Furman. The second time it was.
Right.
So why is it only that AV receiver? If it was something up, I'm like, if somehow the surge was getting in through the TV that's connected to that AV receiver, why isn't the TV frying? Only the AV receiver is.
I don't know. I mean,
this stuff is difficult to track.
This stuff is not only is it super difficult, but a lot of times the correlation does not equal causation thing. Has to show up. Like this AV receiver has been fried 3 times. Yeah, okay. So there is something going on that's making it more susceptible. Maybe it's sitting on top of a big metal rack, or connected to something that's somehow drawing the current to it, through something else. And whatever the other gear is, being protected. Maybe that outlet is not as grounded as you think it is. I mean, who knows? It could be.
It is odd when nothing else is frying.
I know. But
yeah, I mean, HDMI boards are notoriously more susceptible to even a small surge than almost anything else, so that part isn't super surprising. I do want to answer the fiber optic HDMI cable thing, because if it's a fiber optic HDMI cable that says it supports the audio return channel, then it does have a piece of copper in it.
Copper in there, yeah.
Yeah, because any of them that support the audio return channel, that audio return channel is coming back via a copper wire. It's thin, it's small, you can barely see it in there, but it is a copper wire if it supports audio return channel. So interestingly, you might want to try to find an old HDMI fiber optic cable that doesn't support audio return channel. Then it would be only fiber optic and would be an electrical isolator. There wouldn't be any electrical connection with that.
But you're right. I mean, HDMI boards are particularly susceptible, and a power conditioner, a power surge protector, whatever, I mean, they're supposed to sacrifice themselves, but they do have a tolerance. Yeah. And that tolerance for surge can be maybe just high enough that these boards on this particular, lower end receivers have.
I wish when he had made the change and added this firmament that he hadn't plugged both the coax cable and the AV receiver into the firmament, because I mean, you said no, that's not the problem, but I'm like, those were the only two things plugged into the firmament. So if
those aren't the only two things, I think he's got everything plugged into.
No, because he had a power conditioner before for everything else.
Oh.
But since he got the firmament, he plugged the firmament into the outlet that the AV receiver used to plug into. So that's why he plugged the new AV receiver into the firmament, because it took up that last outlet, plugging the firmament into it. But I mean, nothing else got fried. But it's just the fact that if the surge is coming in through the coax cable TV, then it went through the coax cable into the firmament. The only other thing plugged into the firmament is the Denon, and the Denon is the thing that fried. So I'm like, could that be the thing? I don't know. Again, it's very tough to diagnose, but I mean, the only thing I could suggest to you is that if you're suspecting it's the coax that it's coming through, they have these inexpensive just coax lightning isolators. Right. I'd get one that's properly rated for a cable TV signal and not just an over-the-air antenna. It shouldn't make much difference, but who cares? Get the one that is. It's like $20. You can grab it on Amazon. Now, this thing, you are not only supposed to put this in line, so you have the outlet for your cable TV. A very short little coax cable would feed this isolator, and then the isolator would go on and feed the rest of your system. And of course, it's meant to sacrifice itself in the event of a lightning strike, but you are also supposed to attach the grounding screw that is there to like a solid, like 10 gauge copper wire that you ground, so if you're close to your electrical panel or something else, you would ground this thing directly. The idea being that lightning strike comes in, it sacrifices itself and has a path to ground for that strike to go through.
I mean, that's the only
inexpensive,
thing that
barely any loss.
Pops out at me is that maybe if he's using the same outlet that he was using for the AV receiver before, maybe that particular outlet.
Yeah, I know.
Electricity's hard, man.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, what are you going to do? Create false lightning strikes until you track it down? I mean, the only other thing I could tell you to do, it wouldn't be something we would be able to advise you about, would be to get in touch with SurgeX. Because this is all they do, is deal with high power surges and stuff like that, lightning strikes. That's what SurgeX is for. That's why you would potentially pay the extra money that SurgeX charges. Not that I consider them overpriced, but they're more expensive than like what you might get from APC or something. But the type of power protection that they provide, this is what they deal with. So hit them up, see what they have to say, or try one of these self-sacrificing little coax isolators.
All right, Stefan. I guess he's in Barbados, and he also called our AV Rant line, which was nice.
He found it. He must have come to the website, called our offline rant line. Do you still remember that number off heart? You used to say it when it was Dina.
It's offline rant line 97997 something.
Nope, the muscle memory has worn off.
You gave me the first three numbers. I might be able to get it, but that doesn't matter. All right. Is there any reason to pay more for the Epson 6050 UB over the 5050 UB? He knows that 6050 UB claims slightly higher dynamic contrast, 1.2 million to 1 versus 1 million to 1.
That's what they claim.
But is that a genuinely noticeable difference?
No, it is not.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
But there may be other features that are important.
I mean, inside, they're identical. The 6050 UB is sold through the professional channels, right? So it's sold through custom integrators and sold through installers. It's got the black case. It's got the black outer casing. So if you just have to have a black outer case instead of a white outer case, which is what the 5050 UB has, well, maybe that's enough reason to pay almost $1,000 more. But mainly the 6050 UB, it has a longer warranty. It's Epson's overnight replacement warranty. So it is an upgraded warranty, longer and upgraded warranty. It comes with a replacement lamp and a free ceiling mount. So those things are included in the price of the 6050 UB. So it's not like you're getting nothing for your extra money. But in terms of picture performance, nope, no reason there. They're the same inside.
So he already has two SB2000 sealed subwoofers, but he'd like to add two more. He was thinking of adding a pair of SB3000s, thinking they would provide an upgrade, but a pair of HSU ULS 15 Mark IIs would cost less. So which new pair do we think he should get? I don't just get two more SB3000s. I mean,
2000s. Yeah.
2000s,
I mean, I mean, when he says he said it in his offline rant line, and when he emailed the same question, that he's looking to add two more. So I'm thinking this is the same room, and he's going from 2 subs to 4 subs.
4 subs,
That's certainly what this sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. So if your subs currently, if your subs currently can handle your room size, because he didn't really tell us his room size.
No.
So if your subs can currently handle your room size, then they're getting bigger subs will in no way be an upgrade. I mean, they will.
They'll have more headroom that you never use,
and they may play a hertz or 2 lower, maybe, but who cares? It's not in the range of what you're talking about. We're not going from 35 to 30. We're going from 18 to 17.
Now, if this is or even if it is a rectangular room, but let's say it's a non-rectangular room and he's trying to get even better uniformity than what 2 subs can provide, and he's thinking going from 2 subs to 4 subs, although when he's talking about going to a higher output model, that doesn't strike me as the type of upgrade it sounds like he's looking for. I'm just intuiting that, I'm inferring that. But when someone says, not only do I want to add 2 more subs, I want them to be bigger, more powerful subs, and I'm considering that an upgrade, I'm like, I don't think uniformity is the only thing he's going for, because that would just be getting 2 more SB2000s. Right. That would get you the uniformity part of things. Would adding 2 SB3000s or ULS 15 Mark IIs genuinely be an upgrade? Well, not really, because it's sort of weakest link in the chain if you're talking about, what are my 4 subs capable of doing? Well, it's whatever the least capable out of those 4 subs. That's the limiting factor.
So let's answer both the questions that could be being posed here. The first question is, I want better uniformity, therefore I want 2 more subs. Which subs should I get? You should get the subs that perform the same as the subs that you have currently in your room.
Unless you really have reached the output limits of the subs you have, and you're like, I genuinely need more output. Well, then you'd be getting 2 larger ones, but you'd be replacing the ones you have.
That's right.
Not
so
adding to them.
if you are looking to upgrade your sub performance because your current subs are not good enough, then you would be taking the subs you currently have, you would sell them, and you would buy 2 bigger subs and go with that. I mean, in theory, if you really want to buy 2 more subs and you want to keep the subs that you have and you want more output, and that's your problem, you get 2 more subs of the exact same sub and you stack them on top of the subs you currently have.
Right.
That will give you 6 dB more output.
Yes, that is true. That is another way to do it. So either replace or stack if output is what you want. But I highly suspect he has sufficient output, and he's thinking, I want more oomph, I want more grunt, I want more bass. You know what you do then? You turn up the subwoofer trim level or the volume dial on the sub, because that's what you're really talking about, is just relatively more volume coming out of the subs you already have versus all your other speakers. And if that's what you're after, it's just turning up the volume dial or turning up the trim level. Now, let's put all of that aside and deal with the question of SB3000 versus Shu's ULS 15 Mark II. If you look at the CEA 2010 measurements, they are exceedingly similar, those 2 models. The ULS 15 Mark II, it's a larger driver with a slightly smaller wattage amplifier in a bigger box. Now, keep that in mind, because the box size is not insignificant.
Right.
All right. You've gone for sealed subs. The ULS 15, that is a large sealed sub. So please be aware of the physical size of the thing. But the bigger driver in the bigger box with the smaller amp results in about the exact same output level as the SB3000, which is the slightly smaller driver in the slightly smaller box, but with the bigger amp and the longer stroke back and forth of that driver. So they're exceedingly comparable in terms of output, and if output is the only thing you care about and price matters and you're okay with the larger size, then the ULS 15 Mark II, great choice.
Yeah. Nathan, So when we discussed the Bose sunglasses, we predictably poo-pooed them. But
Mhm.
Nathan thinks there's a different perspective to consider because he's under the impression they are bone conduction headphones. Nathan had ear surgery and an eardrum completely replaced. He was able to use bone conduction headphones during the many months it took for him to heal and for his eardrum to work again. And he found it very useful being able to wear earplugs or hearing protection, but still listen to music via bone conduction. So if that is what Bose is doing, Nathan thinks it has its place and shouldn't be disregarded so quickly. It's not bone conduction, though.
Except it's not bone conduction. That's the fly in the ointment of that argument. No, these bone sewn glasses in no way use bone conduction. That was asked directly by some of the people who reviewed it, and nope, it's just little speakers in the frames.
Little speakers that are supposed to be beaming it into your ear so that you hear it, but other people don't.
I mean, very similar to the Oculus Quest VR headset that I have. It just has two very little speakers. I love that thing. Anybody who, I mean, so if you're like
better than the PlayStation 4 thingy,
the PlayStation VR, definitely, yeah.
VR,
the resolution is better on the screens themselves. There's still OLED screens in the Oculus Quest, so the black levels are terrific. Watching Netflix or YouTube inside of that Oculus Quest headset, I could totally do that. That is like, I am down for that. In the PlayStation VR, it's a little too pixely, a little too much screen door going on in there. In this one, I mean, there's some. It's not like looking at a beautiful 4K flat panel in front of you, but no, it's entirely watchable that way. I love that thing. If you're wanting to dip your toe into VR, get one. I highly recommend it.
How much are they?
But they're $500. Yeah. Or no, I think they're $400 in the States. $500 Canadian.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. But no, these Bose sunglasses, I still poo-poo them, Nathan. I still poo-poo them. They are not bone conduction.
Even if they were bone conduction.
Why are they sunglasses? Why aren't they just bone conduction headphones?
I tried bone conduction. They had like these runners headphones that are bone conduction headphones, which are make a lot of sense. And my kids are like, "Oh, I totally want to get those." I'm like, "Yeah, but they don't sound good." Like, yeah, they sound good. I'm like, no, not like you think they do. They sound, you get the sound, but you get all the other sounds too. That's why they're good for running.
Sure.
They're just not good for listening.
No, I totally agree. Bone conduction headphones have their place.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's not what those Bose sunglasses are.
All right, Janan wrote this a while back when he was house hunting. Now they have put a contract on the house, and it has a dedicated media room that is roughly 19 and a half feet long by not quite 12 feet wide. It's basically my room, and 8.5 feet tall. It's a little bit taller than my room. But one of the long walls has 3 windows. The opposite long wall has double doors, which he plans to flip around so that they swing out of the media room instead of into it. There's a large games room next door, so plenty of space to have the doors open the other way. And he doesn't like the way the media room was pre-wired with all the connections on the wall next to the door. That wall also has the only bulkhead, so he'd rather have that be his back wall. That would mean a flat front wall, the windows on the right, and the entrance on the left at the back, and a flat ceiling overhead. And it's this. He's some sort of this completely freaked me out the first time I saw this picture. But he used like a panoramic view, so
it's like a panorama. So it's got the barrel distortion, the fish eye lens kind of looking distortion.
All right,
but yeah, no, this is a rectangle. It appears to be carpeted.
Yes, it does.
The picture that he sent, that appears to be carpeted. I totally agree. I wouldn't be putting my screen on the wall that is immediately next to the door and has the only bulkhead in this entire room. Why they wired that?
Floor to ceiling. Yeah, I mean,
it's floor to ceiling, and it's far enough in.
It's like a third of the way into the room.
I guess the TV would have to be scooched over to the left next to the windows.
You built a false wall. And then
you could build a false, but then the false wall would be the doorway.
You could never get into. You'd have to lock yourself in.
It'd be a really shallow false wall. So no, that's no kind of good solution there. I totally agree with you. Rewiring this place so that you are facing the screen will be on the flat wall, which there's a wonderful flat wall just on the other side that they could have pre-wired.
This is what you do. This is what happens when you let people who know nothing about home theater put your wires in for you. All right, so he'll be going for a projection setup, so he'd like to paint the room a dark color. The rest of the house is Sherwin-Williams Worldly Gray. Any suggestion for the color he should pick for the media room? You should leave it gray. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, if he wants it darker, that's already. Now, I agree, it's going to be gray, but within Sherwin-Williams, you can stick with Sherwin-Williams. They have a whole family of colors. It's the 7000 series of colors. The one you can look up if you're just typing it in is gray screen. Now, why that family of gray in particular? Because it is the most neutral gray that Sherwin-Williams offers. In fact, there were people on AVS who tested out like every paint in the world, and they're like, this is the most neutral gray that you can just buy from a consumer brand. So it's the gray screen. Just look that up. It's the 7000 family. Now, you can, of course, get the darker shades of it. I went with the one they call software for my home theater, which is sort of in the middle. You'll probably want to go one shade darker than the software. It sounds like he wants to go quite dark with this. And so, there's one shade dark in the software, which is called Web Gray.
And I'm going to say, save your money, leave the walls the
leave
color
it as
they are,
is.
and buy yourself some blackout curtains, and you will never see the walls in this place. That's what I'm going to say. And I'm going to say that to every single question about paint coming up. So the second question is, should his front wall where his screen goes be pure black? How important is that? It is zero important, I think. I know that
I would say one tick above zero important, but it's pretty much zero. I mean, if your wall's going to be gray anyway, you're going to have no color tint, and as long as your screen has some kind of black border around it, then I mostly agree.
Do. Yes, it would be very hard.
Well, you can get those edgeless screens now, so
why
would
anybody buy an edgeless?
I don't know why people would buy that, but yeah, no, it doesn't need to be completely black. If you're going for a dark gray already, that's fine. You're done.
Should the paint be a matte finish? And generally, yes. You don't want it to be reflective.
Yeah, it's certainly not glossy. So in Sherwin-Williams line, their most matte is called flat.
Right.
And I'm not sure I would go for flat. Because flat is the type where if you so much as brush your shirt sleeve against it, you'll see a mark on it. It's like really...
Okay. So the upside of a matte finish is that you can touch it up and it will blend in very well. That's the upside of matte finish. The upside of any sort of gloss, as you get glossier and glossier, is that it is more resistant to...
Yeah, it's more durable. You don't see any smudges and little...
Right, so if you're in the kitchen and you've got paint behind,
yeah.
you want it to be as glossy as possible to keep the cooking fumes and stuff, the greases that'll be in the air from sticking to it and being visible. But yeah, matte finish is very fragile, but it's very easy to touch up. Once something happens, if you end up changing something in this room and you got like high gloss paint, you might as well repaint the whole wall because it'll never blend.
But what I would recommend in Sherwin-Williams is to go one tick up from flat. If you go for their highest end paint, it actually is called matte. The one tick up from flat is called matte. So that I can highly recommend. If you go one step down in their quality of paint, it goes from flat to, they call it their velvet finish. So I would go one tick up from flat. That's my recommendation.
He's read that painting the ceiling a shade or two lighter than the walls can help it to visually disappear. Is that true? Should he do it? No.
No, don't do that. You're talking projection setup. If anything, you'd want the ceiling to go darker than the walls. But don't do that. You're going dark gray everywhere. Just go dark gray everywhere.
Or just leave it.
just leave what you have because it's already
leave
gray.
It and turn the lights off. Cover up the windows and you're good. Save the money. This is completely not worth it. All right, when he saw the depth of the room 19.5, he immediately thought multiple rows of seats. In fact, he was thinking...
we should say what he said. What should he do to block the light from...
I skipped this question. I'm sorry. What should he do to block the... Yeah, blackout curtains will work just fine. What I usually do is if you've got... what you want is something that, in my opinion at least, what you want is something that from outside, because people will be able to, can see your windows from outside. You don't want there to be anything weird in the window, aluminum foil or something in the windows that looks crazy. So what you want is a blind, even if it's like a normal Venetian blind or whatever, in that window area, and then a blackout curtain on top, around it, basically in front of it that hangs down. And those are, I mean, you can get a little bit of light leakage. If you're super worried about it, then you would put like Velcro on the wall so that you could, and then stick it to the side of the curtain so that you could actually Velcro it down around the sides, and then have it hanging all the way to the floor, which would be fine.
Yep.
And then above it, you would have to put something too, but
I mean, the other thing you do is have your shades so that people looking from the outside of your house into these windows, they'll see the shades.
Right.
You have your shades mounted like inside of the window wells on the inside. So that's fine. And then you could put aluminum foil over the opening. If you're always going to have curtains on the inside,
right,
you could put aluminum foil, which is obviously very cheap, but completely light opaque. So that could go like on the wall surface over the window well, completely block out the light.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have your curtain over that, so you never see it from the inside, and you have the shades in the windows for anyone looking from the outside.
Windows. I mean, you're never going to open these windows? You're never going to open these windows?
Maybe.
I open my windows, it gets hot in here.
Hopefully he has air conditioning.
All right. I do, but it still gets hot in here. When you saw the depth of the room, 19.5 feet, immediately thought multiple rows of seats. In fact, he was thinking 2 rows of recliners plus a third row being a couch against the back wall.
It's only 19 and a half. It's not 29.
It's a little. How small are these couches? Are these like, little ones? He was thinking that 18 to 20 inches would suffice as walkways to the sides and in between the rows of seating. Is that a good estimate? Should he do something else seat-wise? Yeah, you should totally not do that.
You have underestimated how much space you need.
Okay, well, you can do this, but you're going to have a 55-inch screen. And you're going to be sitting about 4 feet away from it for your first row of seats.
Or you could have non-reclining, like actual theater seats with the seats that fold up so you can walk into them with the tiny little walkway in between.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like what you want. No, 2 rows of recliners in here would be very reasonable. 19 and a half is long enough for 2 rows. Now, I could even recommend, I mean, this will all line up later when we ask about screen size and stuff, but I could recommend your first row being about 10 and a half feet from the front wall.
Okay.
There's your first row. Now, with recliners, you want the second row to be a minimum of 5.5 feet behind that first row. So like we're talking the back of the first row to the back of the second row should be a minimum of 5.5 feet. 6 feet is comfortable. 5.5 is like the minimum. So you could do that. That has put you now at, let's say, 16 feet from the back of the back row to the back wall. That does still leave you 3.5 feet to that physical back wall. Now, how many times are you actually going to have more people over than 2 rows of recliners will fit? If you run into that scenario, I say you get some high bar stools that you could put at the back or some beanbag chairs you could put in front at the front. But I would not permanently install 3 rows in here. No way, no how. I would permanently install the 2 rows of recliners that you want, and you have 3.5 feet at the back of the room, or about, where you could put some high bar stools if you need them, or beanbags at the front. That's what I would suggest.
So if he's going to have at least 2 rows of recliners, he should have a riser for the back row, right? What's the best way to install that riser? And if he wants a third row of seating against the back wall, should that have an additional riser? Well, then you can't have a third row.
You can have one row in here if you need that high bar stools. I should also mention, you asked about walkways. Walkways should be at least 2 feet wide. That is squishy. 2.5 feet is okay. 3 feet is very comfortable.
Not enough.
20 inches also not enough.
Yeah.
24 inches minimum for a walkway.
I mean, you're knocking your knees against stuff when you 24 inches.
Or
you
walking
really
sideways.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have to have a riser? No, you don't.
I mean, you
don't have to.
It's nicer.
It depends on what kind of recliner. If you get 2 different types of recliners, ones that are higher, one that's lower. You could put your recliners on risers that are not a riser, but kind of like the furniture thing, like feet thing that Ted has for his, which looked super unstable. But no one's died in that house, so it seems like it's working.
The stuff you would put under a bed risers.
Yeah, you could use that.
You could do that.
You could use a riser,
but that means you have to hop up into the seat.
People hop up into cars all the time. It's a big deal. But you get low seats for the front, high seats for the back, and you can maybe forego the riser. But you can do a riser. And doing the riser, like we've talked about before, you want to make it inert.
Yes, we are in favor of inert risers, not risers that act as vibrating platforms. We don't like that.
Yeah. Well, let's add a bunch of noise to our room.
Yeah.
So this means that the riser has to have a way. First of all, like the bottom of it should be, it should be like a box with holes in the sides, basically. The bottom half of it should be like filled with sand or something really super heavy.
I'm in favor of building it like a stable floor.
Right.
which is you would put down a flat layer of plywood as basically like your quote-unquote subfloor for this riser.
Yeah.
Then joists, 2x8 or 2x10 joists, all of them connected with cross bracing in them so that it's, really rigid and strong. And then I'm in favor of, yes, lining the bottom of that structure with sand, then some insulation, just light, fluffy, the pink stuff insulation above that, and then one or two layers of plywood on top as your deck. That's what I recommend for a riser.
Yeah.
And I mean, that doesn't have to be actually secured to your existing floor. It can sit on top of it. With the sand in it, it'll be plenty inert.
Yeah. There just has to be holes in the sides too, so that in whatever, the way that you cover it has to allow air,
air to go through so that insulation is actually doing something as a base trap. Yeah.
Right. What screen size should go for? Well, generally speaking, and we've talked about this many times before, it kind of depends on what your preferences are. We just had somebody who said that he went from 75 to 65, even though we thought he should go bigger than 75.
Yeah. But keep in mind, his room is not quite 12 feet wide, so we can't go insane here.
You can't go nuts. So you'll need to decide, to a certain extent, what you prefer as far as your field of vision. And you can do this by having tiles on the ceiling at the movie theater. How many tiles forward is it from you to the screen? How many tiles from screen, wide is the screen? And then that's your ratio. So if you take Rob's suggestion that you're sitting, what you said, about 10 feet from the screen?
I said 10 to 10 and a half feet from the screen, which for me, I would like a 120-inch diagonal screen at that point. That's the size I'd recommend for you.
Sounds about
That's
right.
also wide enough that it's taking up a really good portion of that front wall, but you have 1.5 feet to each side of it to still put your left and right speakers.
Right. Now, alternatively, you could build a false wall or have a screen that's it's forward, but then you would make the screen size smaller because it's closer to you.
Yeah. Or you'd end up moving the seats a bit back, and now you really can't have 3 rows of seats for sure. And in this room, I'm not in favor of a false wall. I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary, but he may
advisable.
want it. I mean, this is a media room.
Maybe.
This is sort of his thing. So.
I go 120 in. That's the size I'd go for.
So he cares a lot about black levels and low input lag for gaming. He assumes we're going to recommend the Epson 5050 with the silver ticket screen. Would anything else be so worthwhile that you should save up for something more expensive? I mean, do you want a JVC? Because JVCs are the ones that are more expensive and that are better.
That'd be the next step up. I mean, in your case, I am saying no false walls, so there's no reason to go above a silver ticket screen. Fantastic performer. Get a fixed frame. Boom, you're done on that front.
Yeah, a couple hundred, not even a couple $100 for that screen. So, I mean, it's cheap too.
Yeah. So, I mean, the 5050 UB, I will 100% recommend to you. Yes, you're right on that prediction. I mean, it would be a JVC would be the next step. It's, I mean, the lowest price one now is $6,000. That's a huge gap from $2,700 to $6,000.
I mean, yeah.
More than double the price.
So enjoy that 50-50. All right, there's no closet in this media room, and he's thinking if he put the gear in the games room next door, that might keep down the heat a bit in the media room. So would it be a good idea, since he's going to rewire the media room anyway, to run all the wires to the games room next door? You could. I see no reason not to do it. I'm
in favor of that.
On the other side of the wall from the front left of your wall there, so that you just basically poke a hole straight through and run all those speaker wire and everything else. I mean, it'd be super easy.
Yeah.
So
no, that sounds like a good idea to me.
And then, any wires that you have exposed could be exposed in the games room, which is by definition probably going to be a mess anyways. And, you can hide them that way. So, yeah. What's a reasonably priced remote that will work well if all of his gear is in the room next door? Let me see. It rhymes with Harmony.
Yeah, you'd want a Harmony hub-based system. The hub requires no line of sight, and the hub is what controls everything and has extenders so that even if you have some piece of equipment inside your theater room that you want to control, you can run one of the extenders.
Right. It would be super easy.
Now, you can get just the hub by itself and then just use the smartphone app. That is one way to do it. I would recommend to you the Harmony Companion. The Harmony Companion comes with the hub. It has just hard buttons. It has no screen on it. So What's nice, though, is you can use the combination of the Harmony Companion all hard button remote with the app on your smartphone. If and when you ever need some commands that aren't programmed into the all hard button remote, you can still pull them up on the screen on your smartphone. So that's a really nice way to do it. If you want one that has the screen, then you have to go all the way up to the Elite. That's a $350 remote. I don't know if you consider that reasonably priced, but I would go with the combo of the Companion that comes with the hub and then the smartphone app.
Anything else to consider if all the gear is going to be in another room? I think if
Conduit.
gaming, well, yeah, conduit, but I think gaming is going to be something he's going to want to consider too. It should not have a problem going through
just to just to the other room next door.
Just to the other room. As long as it's, I don't think you'll have a problem. I would test it. I would go as far away from where you're planning on putting your gaming system as you can, and then try to, control it with your remote controls, just to make sure that you're not having any dropouts. That would be the only thing I would worry about, because there's no real way to extender that through. So. Yeah.
But definitely all the wires that are going from the media room to the game room just have conduit. That way, if you ever need to pull new wire through, it's so much easier. Yeah. Now, this shouldn't be longer than a 50-foot HDMI run. I can't imagine that. So active cable, I'd go ahead and get an active cable. I mean, if you're under 25 feet, even a passive HDMI cable should be fine. But it's probably going to be long enough. I imagine the projector will be ceiling mounted. Go ahead and get an active cable. In fact, I mean, I would splurge and get the Blue Jeans one, because it's going to work.
Right.
It's going to work.
That's true. So we asked you to go with 5.2.4 or 7.2.4.
7.
I mean, there's no reason why you can't go for 7 in here.
Yeah, you have the space.
I mean, I guess it depends on how much that back row is going to be used, whether or not you want to have 2 extra speakers on the side wall that you run in series.
Oh, I see.
To give you a, it would be
the channel count would still be 7.2.4, but you'd have 2 side speakers, 1 for each row.
I would cheat those surround back speakers in, because your front mains are going to be very, very wide.
Right, yeah.
I would cheat your overheads, and I would put your overheads on the sides of your couches.
Yep.
And then I would put the so that they're like on the right above the arms, the armrests of your couches.
2.5 feet in from each wall, basically.
Yeah. And then I would line up my surround back speakers with those, and not with my front mains.
Yeah, because your front mains are going to be a little bit extra wide, because we've gone for a big screen in here. Right. But yeah, no, channel count-wise, 7.2.4.
Yeah. He has it in mind to use his Golden Ear Triton 3 towers as front, left, right, and his Super Center XL center below his screen, and his Aeon 2 bookshelf speakers on the back wall. Would side speakers be useful?
Not just useful.
I mean,
necessary.
If you want surround, because that's the surround part of surround.
Yes,
is the side speakers.
Your surround speakers are not back speakers. It sounds like he's been under the impression, which as many people are, that the surround speakers are back speakers. They are not. The surround speakers are supposed to be on the sides. The surround back speakers, so labeled, are the ones that go at the back. So no, you definitely need some speakers on your side walls. Golden Ear has wonderful models. If you need something that's slim and easily wall mountable, then go for the Super Sats.
Yeah, just realize that whatever subwoofers are inside of those towers do not count.
Right. Okay? Still set them to small.
You still need a subwoofer. So he's assuming we'll say Denon or Marantz receiver from Accessories for Less. Which model? The one that starts with a 4. What is the Denon that starts with a 4?
I mean, they 45? Still have the X4400H for only $750 right now.
Yeah, because that'll get you all the speakers, the channels you need.
Yeah, and there's not much reason to upgrade to the 4500H. Because the 4400H got the update to have enhanced audio return channel, which was like the one extra feature. I think the 4500H is IMAX enhanced and the 4400H isn't, which is actually in favor of the 4400H in my opinion, because IMAX enhanced is a nightmare.
It is
so
a bit of a cluster.
I'd spend $750 on a 4400H.
He says the ceiling is flat, no slants or soffits. Is that a problem acoustically speaking? If by problem you mean optimal, then
it's
yes.
Preferable.
It makes the math work. If not, the math doesn't work anymore.
No, you do not need to vault this ceiling artificially.
So what should we vault the ceiling? That'd be interesting. What should he do acoustic treatment wise? As much as possible is always nice. So the 2 corners that you don't have subs in, because I imagine you're going to put subs in your corners. Or maybe you won't have them.
Well, one of them will still be the door, so it's probably going to be tough by the doorway.
Right. So you should put corner traps.
Sure.
I would put panels. So the panels are about 2 feet wide. 2 feet by 4 feet. I would put a panel right where your first reflection is, and then
On the
I would
side
put it
walls?
on the side
Yeah.
walls. And
Now,
I put
one of those will probably be a window, so maybe you go freestanding panel on
Sure.
that side. Yeah.
And then I would give about maybe a 2 to 3 foot gap, and then I'd put another panel, and then a 2 to 3 foot gap, and I put another panel, and then I'd put them on the back wall about the same.
On the back wall? Yep.
Yep.
Side walls, back wall, you're already carpeted. So if you do the side walls and the back wall, you've pretty much treated about 30% surface area of this room. If even after that, you do the clap test and you still hear a little bit of a zing, maybe you go for some diffusion panels on your ceiling. All of this you can get at GIC, including the freestanding panels to go on the section where there are windows and you might not be able to mount a panel. And that's what you do. Side wall, back wall, and maybe some diffusion on the ceiling.
So he's planning on dual subwoofers, front left corner and rear right corner placement. What subs should he get? And if he has dual subs, does he still need corner bass traps? Why do people... I literally just read something the other day about somebody saying that this speaker has a tweeter that makes room treatments irrelevant. I'm like,
oh, no, that is not true.
Is it the magic tweeter? Is it the most magical of all the tweeters? Yes, do you still need them? I think so. Do you have to have them? I mean, no, but you're going to have a big, if you build this riser the way that Rob and I were talking about, you kind of have a bass trap already.
Yeah, you do have a big bass trap in there. Yeah.
So do you need a corner bass traps? No. Would I get corner bass traps? Yes, I would totally get corner bass traps.
They actually treat different areas of the frequency range. The dual subs are mostly about having the deep bass stuff below 80 hertz that passive treatments really don't affect.
Right.
It's the 80 to 160 hertz, 80 to 300 hertz range that the corner bass traps treat, because the regular 2-inch thick panels that'll go on your side and back walls, they don't treat much below about 500 hertz.
Right.
They're about 500 hertz and up are those ones. So for the 500 hertz down to 80 hertz section, that's where your corner bass traps help you.
The joy of this room is once you've gotten everything in here and you put your subs in there and you calibrate them and you run Odyssey, you're done.
Yep.
Like you will have to do nothing but track down things that vibrate. That will be the last thing that you will have to do, is just track down things that vibrate. And that's easy. I mean, that's pretty easy. So yeah, I would get corner traps and 8.5 foot ceilings. The thing about the tri traps from GIC is that they are a little bit taller than 4 feet. So when you try to stack them in an 8 foot room, or the room that says that it's 8 foot, but really it was 8 foot before they put the drywall in the ceiling and
it's half an inch lower than 8 feet. Yep.
Yeah, you will actually be able to stack 2 of them on top of each other and throw them in that corner. And I would put them. If you've got the room, I would put them up front as well. Sure. Or along the back underneath the back wall there too, just on the floor. Those are easy places to place them, and it's a good,
Also, in this room size, which is only about 2,000 cubic feet, you could totally go sealed subs in here. Which I'm sure smaller subs will be nice to have, because you're talking about a lot of seats and a big screen up front, not leaving you much room to the sides. You might discover that being able to use some sealed subs in here is a really nice treat, and you totally could with this.
Right, the SB2000s would crush this room.
Done.
You could go PC 2000s. I mean,
you certainly could,
and that would give you, all the headroom that you'll never
give you
use.
Lift off,
right? Yes. But it would, you could do the SB 2000s just fine.
Just don't be thinking you need massive ported boxes.
Please,
it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, Bastion. Never-ending story is not going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the day. Bastion says that listening to us every week is entertaining but dangerous because it puts bad ideas in his head. All right, NSA, just come on by. We'll see you guys. just no more waterboarding. It sucks. Case in point, he never wanted the projector before, but now he feels like he needs one. You do not need one. Our projector won't work at all in his living room, but he's thinking he could use one in his bedroom where he can control the ambient light level. He mostly wants to watch YouTube and movies while lying in bed. The BenQ HT 2050A would nicely fit his budget. He's in Europe, so looking at prices in euros. But with its relatively short throw, it won't work with the setup he has in mind. He'd like to put a shelf on the back wall, basically above his head when he's lying down. And then he has room for an 80-inch screen on his front wall. in his bedroom. Okay.
Mhm.
4 meters by 6.3 meters. So that's the size of the room.
That's the size of the room. It's all shoved over to one side.
Yeah. Yeah. And where's the screen? Oh, the screen would go at the foot of his bed.
Yeah.
On the
Well,
long
at the wall across, at the foot
Yeah.
of his bed. Yeah.
On the long wall in the corner, in like the right corner, basically.
Mm-hmm. He has a lovely sample image of what this might
I
look
saw
like.
that. Yeah. Thank you for putting my visage
What a
up
handsome man right there. Yes.
Really, God. My kids were asking me why my wife married me, and I was like, I got no clue, none. Because she fell in love with me when we were just talking over the telephone, and she didn't know what I looked like. But his back wall to his front wall is about 13 feet, so the distance from lens to screen is about 12 feet, and he wants an 80-inch screen, so the BenQ won't work, and he doesn't want a ceiling mount. So what alternative projector for about the same price, €700, can we recommend? Should he consider a used projector or an older model? And what if it's a used projector model like the 5020 UB, but with about 1,500 hours on the bulb? Well, whenever you talk about bulbs and stuff like that, you need to. I would price the bulb before I priced the projector.
Yeah.
What's the replacement cost on the bulb, and just assume that just go ahead and buy one. Wrap that into the price of the projector. You know what
Which,
I mean?
when you're talking €700 to start, that's going to be tough.
That's going to be tough. So there's that to consider.
Now, if you do have the opportunity, so I mean, first up, if you were buying brand new, we're going to point you to Epson here because that's pretty much the only option here. Now, here in North America, this would be called the 3700, I believe.
Okay.
So over there in Europe, it's the TW6700. You can get that right around €800.
Okay.
Looked up the throw distances, and it'll work just fine. It's got a longer zoom range, and it has horizontal and vertical lens shift, so this should work nicely for your shelf mount, and it'll be able to throw the image you want from that distance, and, image quality-wise, really nice and comparable to the BenQ. So
I'm just worried that this guy's not considering all the other things that he'll need to make this thing work. I mean, there's really no room he's got this room up here for this projection, but there's no room for speakers that I can see.
Yeah, speakers, I'm not sure what's going on speaker-wise.
And
I don't know what he's doing with that.
Maybe headphone. I mean, and where's your source going to be in relation to all this?
Well, he wants the source to also be on the shelf. Yeah, he's going to have a TV box next to the projector.
So,
but I'm not sure audio-wise. Yeah, I don't know what the situation he's thinking audio-wise. I mean, I would say,
that's the answer to your question, though. There's the answer to the question, but my question back to you is, I know we talk about projectors all the time, but if I was putting a something in my bedroom, it would not be a projector. It would be a flat panel.
It's just that if you wanted this type of size, I mean, I would assume if 80 inches okay, then 75 inches on a wall mount that brings it a little closer would work. But €700, you can't get a 75-inch TV for that. I mean, not one that we would recommend in any way.
I'm sure Insignia has one out there or something.
Right.
Like that.
So I mean, so this type of size for that kind of price, a projector is the way to do it. He has full light control in this bedroom, so I'm not against it. Like I say, buying new, the TW6700, I can easily recommend to you. If you can somehow find a higher end Epson, even if it's an older model, we're maybe talking the 3020 or the 3030. Or if you can get one of the ones that's a UB, an ultra black model, I agree with Tom. Factor in the price of a lamp. If it's already got 1,500 hours on it, that means in about 1,000 hours you're replacing that lamp. So that probably not. But if you could find some kind of UB model for €800, then I'd hop all over that. Why not? But if it's got a highly used lamp, I probably wouldn't. But I think you probably could find something like a 3020 for about that price, because that's a considerably older model now.
Right.
If someone's selling one of those with, or you're getting it with a new lamp, then that I could get behind.
Nick is a fellow with the BK Electronics subwoofer that just needed an amp repair, and with the money he saved not having to buy a whole new sub, he got a 65-inch C8 OLED. So that's his subwoofer and TV sorted. Now he wants a new AV receiver. He's looking at the Marantz SR6013 or 7013. The Denon X4500H, they seem to be nearly identical feature-wise, but the price points are significantly different. Is there some compelling reason to choose one of them over the others? Which one should he get and why? Marantz is going to have analog inputs.
7.1 analog inputs, which is like the only difference between the 7013 and the X4500H in those systems. And of course, the looks. Just the external looks and the 7.1 analog inputs is why the SR7013 costs more, if you want to think of it that way. But otherwise, they're identical.
That's not why it costs more. It costs more because it's different.
Because it's Marantz.
Yeah, it's Marantz. Yeah.
But the 6013 does not have a front panel display other than that teeny tiny little porthole display that tells you your volume level. It has no other front panel display. It also has a smaller power supply and less amplifier power. So it's a legitimately different model from the X4500H and the SR7013. They're identical.
I remember this guy having a fairly small room, though. I can't imagine that the amplifier power is going to make a huge difference in this case.
I'm more worried about the front panel display.
I never use my front panel display, so
sure,
I don't.
If it's in a rack or in a closet, then that doesn't matter.
So in this case, and in fact, all cases of AV receivers, I almost never look at amplifier power because it's not. It is
a rating of 105 versus 125, so it's essentially insignificant.
So I would look at the feature set, and if it had the features I wanted, I would put it in the yes column, and then if it didn't have the features I wanted, whatever those features might be for you, I'd put it in the no column, and then I'd look at my yes column, and I would buy the one that was the cheapest.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, the SR6013 also does not have Oro 3D, whereas the other two do.
No one cares, but go on.
If you really got to have Oro 3D. Unfortunately, all of these are IMAX enhanced, so thank goodness you can turn it off in all of them. Unless you absolutely need and want Oro 3D, unless you absolutely need and want a front panel display, I'd get the 6013. It's the cheapest. It has all the same features otherwise, and it's less expensive. But if you've got to have a front panel display and or you've got to have Oro 3D, then I'd get the X4500H. There's almost no reason to get the SR7013 at the higher price unless you just love the external looks, which is fine if you got the money, great. Or you absolutely need to have 7.1 analog inputs.
Yep. All right, Dave. Dave wants to upgrade the graphics card in his gaming computer, but he'd also like to use it for Plex. So are there any considerations to keep in mind as far as his graphics card selection? He'll be connecting this computer to a 2017 LG OLED. I guess HDCP 2.2.
Well, not really from Plex. Plex doesn't really deal with HDCP at all.
I guess that's I guess that's the only thing that would make me worry about which card to get. I guess. I mean,
it's more a question of, are you going to be using your computer to stream any services other than Plex? Because if you're going to be using it to stream Netflix, or you're going to be using it to stream Amazon, or Hulu, or Vudu, if you're going to be using any of those streaming services, then you do need to worry about the HDCP, and you need to worry about Microsoft's DRM thing that they worry about. So if that's the case, you're going to want to stick to getting an NVIDIA card. And you're going to want to stick to, I think you could technically go back to the 950, but at this point, you're either going to get a 1000 series or a 2000 series. By all accounts, the 2000 series don't seem like they're doing much in modern games these days, because that was all about ray tracing, and hardly any games are using ray tracing yet. So I'm almost like, get a higher end 1000 series, like a 1070 or a 1080. Because you can get those for the same price as like a 2060 or a 2070 respectively, and there's almost no reason to get one of the 2000 series. So yeah, that's kind of where I land. Stick with an NVIDIA, and then you're good to go, other than playing back actual Ultra HD Blu-rays, physical discs, which you didn't ask about at all. But if you want to do that, you can only do that with the built-in Intel graphics.
There you go.
Can't do it with any external graphics card. It's insane.
All right, Blake. Blake's been listening to our recent discussions about sending both subwoofers on mono signal. He read through Rob's 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers, and he understands the process and reasoning behind it. But in his case, one of the subwoofers is connected with an RCA cable, but the other subwoofer at the back of the room is using a wireless connection. When he ran Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 with it set for dual independent subwoofers. It accounted for the latency in the wireless signal and said the sub at the back of the room is much farther away than it actually is. So in his scenario, would we still suggest sending only a mono signal? Would any changes be necessary when trying to follow Rob's 12-step guide? So the latency thing is because it's being converted from an analog signal to a wireless signal sent wirelessly across the room, reconverted back to analog, and then pumped into the the subwoofer. There's a loss of time. There's just it takes time.
Typically adds 10 to 14 milliseconds, which translates into about 10 to 14 feet in the distance setting.
Right.
That would be added. Yeah.
So he makes a good point, and the point is these subs are clearly are getting signals at different times.
Right.
There is no other way.
You send them the same signal to begin with, but one of them is getting that signal 10 to 14 milliseconds later than the other one.
I guess so. My thought is twofold. And the first one, I don't even know if this would work. This is just what came off the top of the dome piece here. And that was only plug in the one sub that's physically plugged in. Have Odyssey, set your distances and everything. See what the distance it sets it as. Change the phase on your sub and see if it changes that distance. And try to get that distance into about that whatever the latency is, whatever the latency is for the other thing, so you'd have to do it once with your wireless one to see what it says. Let's just say it sets it at 14 feet, like Rob just said.
Sure.
Well, then you're going to keep running Odyssey, changing the phase knob slightly each time on your sub until you get your physical sub to be also around 14 feet.
Yeah, it's just phase is not the exact same thing as the distance setting.
It's
so
not,
it might
not work. You see that? This is why I'm saying this is off the dome piece, and I'm not really sure if this would even work. The other thing is just to let the two subs be set independently in this case.
I mean, the thing is, the procedure that I laid out in that 12-step guide should still work. The adjusting, so you'd end up adjusting the phase knob on the sub that is connected with the wire. Yeah. And you would probably have to adjust it more than if both subs were connected with wires. But ultimately, the end result should still work. You're still sending the identical signal to both subs. One of them is receiving it later than the other because of the wireless latency. But ultimately, we're just trying to get the waveforms of the two subs to work together in a way that creates the most uniform base possible.
But if you have your subs placed optimally where you shouldn't have to do this, then... we're getting into a trickier situation, right? So let's say that he's got them placed optimally, and one sub is just the latency because of the wireless transmission is such that it doesn't work. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So your option then at that point is to treat the subs like they are not placed optimally, or to do the thing I just said, which is see if you can futz with the phase knob before you run Odyssey. And so that they're kind of about equal as far as latency is concerned, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think if you're within a couple of feet, you'd be fine, or you just run them and let Odyssey.
If you have a rectangular room and you've optimally placed the two subs for a rectangular room, so the midpoints of opposing walls are diagonally opposite corners. I agree. Maybe you do just let Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 with sub EQHT run the way it runs with dual independent subwoofers, and it accounts for the latency, because in that scenario you should end up with the two of them set to the same distance anyway if they were both wired. But it's just going to be accounting for the fact that one of them isn't wired automatically. But if you do not have a rectangular room and or your subs are not optimally placed, I would still say follow my 12-step guide and nothing really changes. It's just that you might have to change the phase knob more than if they were both wired.
I mean, the other way you could fix this is to buy a second wireless kit.
Wireless transmitter, and just have them both connected wirelessly.
Have them both connected wirelessly, and then...
Also true.
That would work as well, because the distance between the receiver and the transmitter, that's not the problem.
That doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with it.
It's the conversion process that takes up all the time.
So. There you go. Simplest of all. Make them both the same type of connection.
Yeah. Carl, What do we think about NIMS Labs' latest Kickstarter project? It's okay, Bluetooth 5.0 portable cassette player for $63. I haven't looked at it, so I'm going to look at it now because I didn't get this far in the question. I looked at the questions last night. The questions last night were the same questions for last week.
I didn't touch them last night. I touched
did not
them
help me
early this morning. No, this was literally Monoprice's April Fool's Day joke this year. Was cassette decks with Bluetooth built in, and someone decided let's make that a real thing.
So there's no case on the outside of it? You just stick the...
I don't know. It doesn't even look like it, does it?
Doesn't look like it has a cover.
Doesn't look like it in the image that they're showing. I don't know.
That girl looks very uninterested in listening to the crap she's listening to.
As she should be. Yes. No.
Poor children do not, like... They understand that a record scratch noise means something,
right? Yes.
But they have no idea what it comes from.
No actual context for what that sound is.
The same thing with cassettes and VHS and all that other stuff. They're like, what are these people doing?
That's the same as the save icon on your computer. What does that represent? Why does it look like that? If you've never used a 3.5 millimeter floppy or 3.5 inch floppy disk.
Yeah. Somebody, we were watching The Matrix, and he was handing out like zip discs or whatever. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, that's right. No, wasn't he handing out mini discs?
Mini discs, that's what it was. Well, Sony
mini discs. Or Zoolander, where they do use zip discs.
Oh my God, zip disc. I was the bomb. I was one of the first people that I knew that had a zip, like 100 meg zip drive. I could put so many things on there, and I would take it to school and be like, we don't have a zip drive here. I'm like, I'm screwed. I think it's stupid. There we go.
It was literally an April Fool's Day joke, and now they brought it to life. That's my thought.
Is this a different Nick?
It is, I think, isn't it? I don't know.
No, I don't know. Another Nick. Or a Nick, I don't know. Nick isn't really asking a question here, but he is requesting that we have some further discussion about multiple subwoofer placement and setup to better inform our listeners and to make the two most popular approaches as clear as possible so there won't be so much confusion. Dude, if there's confusion about setup at this point with subwoofers, I don't know what else I can do.
Well, it never hurts to clarify, so here we go.
All right, this is a short question. Oh my God, it's like a whole page of reading.
Well, it's pretty much all here. All we have to basically do is say yes or no.
All right. Overall, Nick agrees that with what we've been saying about how each subwoofer should not be individually time aligned to the rest of the speakers, that the bass uniformity and linearity should be sorted first, and then the entire collection of subwoofers should be time aligned as a single entity with the rest of the speakers. That's much clearer than the things that we've said. But the confusion Nick has been inferring seems to be coming from the differences between what he would dub the Harman approach and the Earl Geddes approach. Geddes approach. Yes. Nick would like us to make it absolutely clear that the Harman approach is only for rectangular rooms. You put the subs across the room from each other, either in midpoints of opposing walls or diagonally opposite corners. Then you do not mess with the phase, and you set all the subs the exact same signal, a mono signal, and that's about it, but only in rectangular rooms. I mean, square rooms, too, would be fine, but whatever.
Sure. Well, a square is a special rectangle.
That's right. Especially when it has to take the shorter bus to school. The Earl Geddes approach uses a minimum of 3 subwoofers and could also be used in rectangular rooms. But unlike the Harman approach, it can also be used in non-rectangular rooms. One sub goes in the corner, a second sub goes in the opposite wall, but not in the diagonally opposite corner. And the third sub goes someplace about as far away from the other 2 subs as possible. And you might even put that third sub at a different height. You totally mess with the phase level and EQ of each of these 3 subs individually, but to do that, you either need predictive software or you need to... the confusion is coming from the fact that we've never talked about this before. But anyways,
This is the multi-sub optimizer software. That is the predictive software you could use.
Or you have to be able to see the real-time frequency response across multiple seats simultaneously. So Nick understands why we advocate for the Harman approach. It's simpler, there's much less to mess with, and it doesn't require a bunch of measurement equipment. But could we please make it clear to our listeners that it's really only for rectangular rooms and that 2 subs or 4 subs is not always the best choice because 3 subs with the Earl Geddes approach might deliver better results in many cases. Many cases. What do you mean?
All the cases where it's non-rectangular rooms, or you can't put the subs across the room from each other.
I mean, yeah, but I don't understand why you have to have 3 subs in that thing. But whatever.
Well, because 2 subs won't get it done. Yeah. That's the full uniformity, right? So, I mean, yeah, okay. I think what Nick is coming at is he's probably seen many of the diagrams that we've shown where these are not rectangular rooms. That's been the case. Or it's been open concept rooms. We've had a ton of those, right? And we've still advocated for getting 2 subwoofers, not 3.
Right.
Definitely not one, but we've advocated for getting two. And I will certainly own up to saying, even in these not necessarily rectangular rooms and only two subs, saying, okay, just get them across the room from each other. I will certainly own up to having said that. Now, I guess not every time have I mentioned in those scenarios, you're gonna need to mess with the phase to get the uniformity right. It's not a rectangular room. You're trying to get them across the room from each other. Most of the time I say that, but not every time. I'll own up to not every time have I said that, but you'll need to mess with the phase. And he's saying if you want the actual really nice uniformity, that in these non-rectangular rooms or in situations where you can't put the two subs across the room from each other in a rectangular room, that if you add the third sub and you use the software, that you can achieve
and
those
you have
results.
the multiple measurement mics, and you have the input on your computer.
Well, with the software, you only need the one measurement mic.
Well, it says multiple seats is what he said. Multiple seats
well,
all at the
if you're
same
doing
time.
it without the software, you have to have it measurement in real time with multiple mics simultaneously. That is... well, we had the one listener where we talked about, well, you could get a bunch of like iPods or iPads and an individual mic for each of them with a real-time fast Fourier transform running on each of them and have each of those in their seats and look at them all. Look at them all.
You could theoretically.
You could do that. We've mentioned that before on this very podcast in a previous episode. So no, I mean,
okay.
The three subwoofer approach means you need at least three subs.
The whole thing is pedantic, and no offense, Nick, and please don't take this that way, but the whole thing is pedantic in this podcast. For the most part, we are trying to get people the best sound that we can get them for the least amount of money with the least hassle.
Right. We're very often trying to ease someone into the idea of more than one sub or even any subwoofers at all, because we do have some people who coming from the two-channel no subwoofer crowd.
Right. And then telling them that they not only need a second sub, but they need a third sub, and that third sub might need to be placed up on top of a wall someplace.
And to do this, you need software and a measurement microphone for sure.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's just too much. And
like where I come from with the two subwoofer approach, even in a non-rectangular room or where they're non-optimally placed, because that's just the way it has to be, with two subs, you can do it trial and error. Will it be as uniform as Earl Getty's approach with three subs and the software and the measurement mic? No, you are completely correct, Nick. Yeah. To get the uniformity that we're aiming for, you are completely correct. Nothing Nick said is wrong. Everything Nick said is right.
Right.
But to me, there is still a middle ground. There's a ground between one sub, which will never be uniform across multiple seats, and between that and rectangular room with two optimally placed subs or three subs and the Earl Getty's approach, right? There's somewhere in between that. And that's where I'm landing on the two subs plus trial and error, because you can do that with like, okay, two subs in people's minds. It might be easier to get to two subs, certainly easier than to get to three subs.
When you're looking at a minimum $500 purchase for a sub,
that's right.
It just
we've gone from 500 to 1,000 instead of 500 to 1,500.
Yeah, 1,500. Yeah,
and then plus a measurement mic,
and
so that's another $100.
You know, the learning curve and everything else that goes along with it. And the learning curve,
yeah. So that's where we're coming from, Nick. This, even in non-rectangular, even in non-optimally placed rooms, still going for two subs plus trial and error. But you're absolutely right. It's not as good as Earl Getty's approach, but it's less expensive and requires only trial and error. So that's why I'm willing to still recommend that. Yeah. Hopefully that makes it clear.
I mean, you can really, if you're a hardcore enthusiast or a hardcore, I mean, even beyond enthusiast of AV, then yes, there's tons of stuff you can do, and you can move. You cannot just place a panel on your wall at the first reflection point and then put a 3-foot gap in between and put another one just haphazardly around your room. You could measure the angles, and you could try to make sure that you're hitting, second reflection points and third reflection points and all this other stuff. And, I'm of the opinion for the most part that will put people off of this hobby more than it will help people in this hobby. And that's where I land. I land on I'm not going to make people not want to do this.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want the answer to the question to be so intimidating that people go, nah, I'm out. And that's the way I feel about Rob's and play with the phase all day long. I'm like, I wouldn't
That's still
do it.
too much.
That's too much for me. I wouldn't do it. And I, therefore, while people, that's technically the answer to your question. My answer usually is buy one sub and just care about one seat and
play
do
with
the subwoofer
placement.
crawl,
Yeah.
and then, you know, maybe futz with the phase knob a little bit, but not much, and be okay with it. Because once you get to the point where you're loving the sub and you're starting to notice the problems, then you come back with an open mind.
And we're like, okay, now you add a second sub.
Right. And we've had people like you said, we've had people on this podcast who have asked very technical questions, and we've given them very technical answers, but that's not where I'm going to start. I am not starting there. I will never start there, because I want people to get this up. You know,
right.
I want people to experience surround sound. I want people to change
if
the settings on their TV to cinema or warm or something, and not say you need to go spend $300 on the calibrator, and then you need to do this, and you need to black out, you need to paint the front of your room
learn
black.
how to use the new Spears and Munsell disc, because it won't tell you how. You just have to know how already.
I'm not doing that because people are just going to go, nah, it's not worth it.
Right.
I'll just leave it in dynamic mode and be okay. That's I gotta get people into it, and then when they come back to me from a place of, I really love my subwoofer, but there's one time during this one movie where it like shakes all the glasses in the kitchen, where I'm not sure why. Oh, you've got a hump. Oh, how do I fix that? Well, let's start talking.
I think maybe Nick is hoping that we won't continue to espouse 2 subs and it'll be perfect, like no matter what. Which
I don't think we've ever said that, but go on.
Yeah, we try not to, but we have, in the effort of time, sometimes, oversimplified. So agreed, Nick, you're right about everything, but we don't want to say 3 subs or nothing, because that's too much. That's unreasonable.
So Nick continues, even though Harman published their white papers on placing multiple subwoofers in their JBL synthesis systems, they use Arcos, which takes measurements from multiple microphones simultaneously and uses real-time monitoring adjustment. So would we agree that if you can afford the equipment and the time needed for the calibration, even Harman would advocate for doing more than just put 2 subs across the room from each other? I think that they would say that it would be better if you did the measurements, but that if you have a rectangular room, you're doing the measurements, you're probably going to end up just putting the subs across the room from each other anyway.
Well, I mean, they would advocate, same as, many of the professional designers, if you're building the room from scratch, they're going to advocate, no, you build the rectangular room, you put a sub in each corner or a sub at the midpoint of each of the walls, because... well, even then, they probably, they're perfectly willing to sell you on an Arco system, right?
Sure.
If you're doing all that, and you still can make it perhaps even that tiny bit better. No, I agree. If you're coming into a pre-existing room, it's not a rectangle, or you can put in 3 subs, but not 4 at the midpoints or 4 in the 4 corners or whatever. The Arcos approach is essentially the Earl Getty's approach, with you're measuring in all the positions simultaneously and taking, it's doing the trial and error work for you, right? It's automated that process. Right. That's why you need this expensive equipment and the professional person to run that software for you. But yeah, no, it works. It absolutely works. This is the brute force approach to getting uniform bass.
Infinite Gary. Gary has noticed several YouTube videos, not just ours, that if someone is wearing a striped shirt, it will often look as though the lines are dancing or creating strange optical patterns. He knows this is common. Why so difficult for video to show a stable striped shirt? You don't like it when I wear my Moray shirt?
I always wear striped shirts. Definitely happens with me.
Yeah. It's it's just that creating that straight line, that's one of the hardest things for especially straight lines that move at an angle of any kind. That really gives TVs a hard time. That's one of the tests that we use when we're looking at the benchmark test for whether or not 3.2 pull down and that sort of stuff is working correctly. It depends the frame rate. If the frame rate of the and the resolution, at least, of the image is the same as your display. So say you have a display that's 60 hertz. That's pretty common, or some variation thereof, and 1080p, and the camera was 1080p and 60 hertz, then you should get perfectly straight lines. No problems. But when it's in anything else, and there's any sort of conversion going on, and especially if it's converting from changing frame rates, which can happen, especially on something like YouTube, which the frame rate will change because based on their bandwidth.
Differing resolutions between the camera, the video itself, which might have been up-resed or down-resed, and the display it's being shown on. Yeah, because what we're talking about here is the moire effect or moire patterns, Moire, if you're looking it up. Moire patterns, which, I mean, you can create them physically, right? You can make something that's a bunch of slats, and then something that is also a bunch of slats, but just slightly differently placed, spaced between them, and then move those in front of each other. And you'll create all these weird wavy looking patterns. And all it is if you're thinking about lines or a grid, when two of them don't perfectly line up with each other, you get these little optical illusions, these dancing looking lines. That is the moire effect. So it happens whether we're talking about a digital grid, like the sensor in a camera or the grid on your flat panel display, or real physical grids moving in front of each other. That same effect happens. So that's where it's coming from, is differences between what the grid is capturing and then what the grid is showing you back. And on YouTube, it can certainly be changing because sometimes the resolution is changing because if your internet bandwidth, we're like our cameras here are 1080p, but my video I always put out is 720p, which is then played back at whatever resolution YouTube is feeding you. So very easy.
Yeah, I record in 30 frames a second too on my end, because 60 frames is just, with this laptop and streaming and recording the audio and recording the video, it's not happening at 60 frames a second.
When you got different grids trying to line up at different times, you end up with the moire pattern.
Yeah, my moire shirt. Gary has seen a number of mentions of certain classic films being scanned at 8K, but then released in 4K or 1080p on Blu-ray. Now that 8K TVs are available to buy, does the technology exist for people to see those original 8K scans? Could they maybe be obtained on a hard drive since there's no 8K disc format?
You would not want to watch an original scan. That would be a terrible thing to watch.
Right. So the idea here is that what they did is, they went back to the original films themselves, the
negative if they can get it,
and then they scan it in at 8K so that they have the
which
highest
is essentially
resolution.
Just taking a still photograph of each film frame. That's really what they're doing. Yeah.
And then, so therefore they can then put it out in 1080p or whatever. And they have an archived version because, cellular doesn't last forever. A lot of these older movies, really old movies in particular, are all gone. They're just lost to history. They got burnt up in fires or melted or thrown away or whatever. So,
but if you see original film negatives or original like what was actually shot even on a digital camera, and that, to us it looks ridiculously overexposed. And it doesn't have any color correction or anything like that. None of that is applied. So you wouldn't want to just get the 8K scan and watch that. That would be horrible to watch.
I don't think they could do color correction and do image compensation and the different stuff they could do to it. But I don't think they could give it back. They could give it to you in 8K, but it would. I think they would have down. Basically done all this correction, output a 4K, and then up convert it to 8K.
Probably, yeah. No, but I think what Gary has in mind is if these 8K scans already exist, can we just get them? But no, there has to be at least a major mastering step in between to get the scan itself into something you would ever want to watch.
And then scan, and then when you do that mastering, then you're gonna lose some resolution, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, what you would probably want to do is up-res it to 16 or 32K, do all of your processing to it, and then create an 8K master out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. How much time we have left here? How long is this question?
Might be able to do one or two.
Micro recommendations to FOMO Josh. So Mike bought himself an 85-inch Sony X900F as an upgrade over a 7-year-old 64-inch 1080p Samsung Plasma. So far, so good, he says. But of course, his newer TV has revealed that his Denon 4310 the receiver cannot pass through 4K HDR. So time for a receiver upgrade. He wants to have a 7.1.4 Atmos set up in his theater, but he would also like to have soundbar in his master bedroom and several other zones of in-ceiling speakers throughout his house. So he'd like to be able to play any source from any room. So he's concerned that even though Denon offers HEOS, if he wants to retain full 7.1.4 sound in his theater, that might not work if he's sharing that same audio in another zone. I don't know how many times you're going to be sharing the same audio that you want in 7.1.4 in the zone 2.
I know.
I don't know how many times that would happen, but maybe it does. Maybe he's watching a football game in multiple rooms. So he's heard us advocate for Yamaha's Music Cast system for this very reason, but will he miss Denon and Odyssey too much to make that a viable brand switch? Could he achieve this setup he wants for under $4,000? Well, I mean, as long as it's got YPOW with the RCS or RSC,
yeah,
I would be okay with the switch.
Oh,
that would be fine. The Yamaha system, their room correction is very, very, very good. So I would be.
And if you want 7.14.4, you are for sure getting the highest level of YPOW because the only model they offer is their flagship that can do 7.1.4. So could you do all this for under $4,000? Yeah, I mean, I will say go into the Yamaha Music Cast system because it can do what you want and nobody else's system can.
I know.
Which is you're continuing to play 7.1.4 in your main theater, and then that very same source is playing in stereo in another zone via the Music Cast system without having to downsample.
Seems ludicrous that there's not more options for this.
I know. But
it's really stupid.
The only game in town, but at least it's good and it exists. Now you can get the current flagship, which is the RXA 3080, over at Accessories for Less for $1,300. So that's your theater receiver there. Definitely still room in the budget. For that soundbar you want to put in the bedroom, I'd recommend the Bar 400 from Yamaha. You could even get the version that comes with 2 additional wireless Music Cast 20 speakers for a full 5.1 wireless setup in your bedroom, which will also entirely work with Music Cast. Then for the in-ceiling speakers you've already installed, what you want is a Music Cast amplifier. Now, they have the one that is just an amplifier in a box and connects to Music Cast, but for some reason it's $500, right? Now,
that seems silly.
Part of what's nice about that is it's very small and compact. So if that's what you need, okay. And you could still afford it in the budget that you've given. But they also just have stereo receivers that work with Music Cast. So physically they're much larger, but they're like $280 instead of $500. So as long as you physically got the space, you just get some of the Music Cast stereo amplifiers. So yeah, I'd go Music Cast to your mic, and you can definitely do it for this budget.
Marty, first he wants to say thanks for the advice to use a mini DSP to tune the signal being sent to his butt kicker tactile transducers rather than just feeding them the exact same signal as what's being sent to his subwoofers. It made the tactile effect much more natural, and now it's just what he wanted. You're welcome. I don't remember any of this.
That's great.
Marty recently started using the Odyssey Editor app. He was surprised to see the low bass roll-off in the default target curves, even for the subwoofer channel. Is this some sort of conspiracy to make people want bigger subwoofers? Yes?
We did address this once a while back. It was all the way back when we were still making individual breakout videos, or Austin was. So that it was way back then. But this did come up before, but it's worth talking about again.
I don't remember.
No, there does appear to be a first order roll off starting right at about 60 hertz or so.
Okay.
Or no, a little bit 50 or 40 hertz. Anyway, by the time you get down to 20 hertz, it is like -6, I think, something like that. And that just is part of the target curve. And we did back then and continue to sort of speculate a little bit about this. I mean, so I'll repeat what I said back then, which is in any of the speaker channels, that completely makes sense.
Yeah.
You want a little bit of low end. You don't really want them to even try to play all the way down to 20 hertz. But why does this similar roll-off appear in the subwoofer channel as well? We don't have a complete explanation. We've never heard back from Odyssey exactly why the target curve appears that way. We will say that it essentially compensates for corner loading a sub somewhat, but why would you want to compensate for that? People put the sub in the corner to get the louder bass, so
right.
by default do we want, and not everybody puts their sub in a corner, so it shouldn't be assumed that that's the way it's going to be. So yeah, I don't have a tremendously good explanation for why the target curve appears that way. By all accounts, from everything Chris Kyriakakis has told us directly, outside of the Odyssey Editor app, it doesn't do that. It does just target truly flat response down to 20 hertz in the subwoofer channel. So I think it might just be a bit of a programming oversight in the
I'm gonna have to go check
editor
my.
app
I'm
itself.
literally looking for my phone right now, so
Yeah.
I can check my roll off. Though God knows I don't need any more bass in this room. I need a. You know
Well,
what I
that's
need?
just the thing. I mean, you can play your sweep and know that no, it isn't actually rolling it off down to 20 hertz.
I need to
in your case
be able to stream like a step. Like I wanted you to down. Okay, it's we're at 30 hertz. Okay, 30 29, 28, so that I can find the freaking buzz because it's driving me nuts, and I think it's in the front left corner. But these buzzes they reflect
they have
around
those
the room.
test tones on YouTube. Totally,
I'm gonna have to do that, and I've been
totally
meaning to do it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
But no, ultimately, the real answer that I want to give to you, Marty, is to just rely on playing actual sweeps after the fact.
Right.
Because regardless of what the graphic in the editor app might say, what ultimately matters is the end result, right? So if you know you have a fully capable sub that 100% can play flat down to 20 hertz, and you play a sweep after having run Odyssey, don't change the target curve beforehand. Do so after. Play that sweep at full reference volume. If you're noticing, yeah, I definitely have a roll-off in that deep bass, okay, go ahead and change the target curve in the editor app. Yeah. But I actually think it's just a programming oversight because Chris himself has said, no, the actual target curve is a flat line.
So he added an Emotiva Bassox A700 amplifier to his system. He already had a different amp for his front and surround speakers, so this Emotiva is for the surround backs and Atmos speakers. He's noticed about 3 to 5 seconds after the power LEDs light up on the Emotiva, he gets a moderate pop from his surround backs and overheads. It's not loud enough that he's worried about damaging his speakers, but the other amp he's been using all this time doesn't produce any sort of pop at all. So it's just something you'll have to live with. Yeah, that's it should be they should have the soft start circuitry, which I don't understand why that's not in this. But whenever I have an amp that's like that, I just turn off the auto on and make it on all the time.
Yeah.
And then that eliminates that problem. I mean, yes, you use more wattage, but dude, are you seriously worried about it keeping some capacitors full all day long? It's not really doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, so this isn't like the huge, massive, scary type of pop. He's definitely said, no, it's kind of, it's there. You can hear it, but it's, moderate. So, I mean, the likelihood of it actually damaging a speaker, very, very low. It is really common. Tons of amps do have this little bit of a pop, some of them much, much louder and a bit scary at some points. And the ones that have a full soft start circuit or, they trickle in the current, like the ATI or the monoprice monolith amplifiers, they have no pop whatsoever? And maybe that's exactly what you're coming from. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to just give Emotiva a call and say, do you have a soft start circuit? Should it be making any pop whatsoever? It's not impossible for a soft start circuit to have failed inside of a piece of electronic gear. So
I'm actually, I think that's a really good idea. I would call Emotiva because this is not something I would expect from one of their amps.
No, because theirs don't usually do this.
If
it's there, it's really soft.
If you're using like a Dayton Audio amp, that because I think mine does it too.
Yep.
And I am like, I spent $100 on this amp. I'm surprised it doesn't smoke while it's working.
You turn it on to the.
Yeah. So I just leave it on all the time, and it's good to go.
But yeah, no, it wouldn't hurt to give Emotiva a call and just ask them about it. And if they're like, yeah, it produces a little bit of a thump, you're like, okay, and then you just live with it because it's not the end of the world. It doesn't do it throughout your movie watch or something like that. Just once at the beginning.
So he says he's always envisioned the phase knob on the subwoofer as just adding some time delay. But if that were the case, wouldn't different frequencies have their phase affected differently from each other? Like one particular frequency might be exactly 180 degrees out of phase with the original signal, but other frequencies would be totally different degrees out of phase, correct? How does this all work? Yeah,
so it is not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not
just
the same.
A delay.
Yeah, it's not a time delay. It's not like it starts it a little bit later. To me, it like starts it in a different point of the arc. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. If you're thinking about this wave that's going up and down, even if it's a complex wave, it's multiple frequencies overlaid on top of each other. You add all of those together and you get this complex wave pattern. The phase knob, basically, it's like. Imagine that without the driver actually physically having done this, you imagine that the driver has pushed itself out or pulled itself in as its starting position.
Right.
So when the signal comes in, it's as though, well, I already began this far out, so I only move a little bit farther out, even though the signal said to go much farther out, and then I move commensurate amount back in, so that I'm still following the shape of the wave, but it's as though I started in an already forward or backward position. So the same thing, imagine that you did use just a time delay. The same thing would occur, but then you just cut off the early part of that time.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, if you think about it this way, like what Rob's describing, and it is sort of like messes with your brain
a little bit, yeah.
But if you're starting zero phase, right, it would go out the entire length and then back towards the center, and then back the entire length and back forward. That'd be one complete wave,
along with the in and out of what the signal in the wave says. Yeah.
But and if you did 180 instead of going out first, it would go in first,
right,
and then back again. But anywhere in between, let's say, anywhere in between, it goes out, but it doesn't go out all the way that it would have if it had started at zero. It goes out part of the way, then comes back and goes all the way back the way where it's supposed to be, and then it continues on forward and back the way, the entire length. So that first one is truncated a little bit. If that makes sense.
So so if you took the whole waveform and in the time domain you just moved it over, right? And then you overlaid the original wave with that time displaced wave.
Right.
All right. Now you're looking at that. Now, if you took that time displaced wave and you just altered the phase knob until now the wave that you're seeing perfectly lines up with the time displaced wave, but it's just in the phase adjusted one, you have the beginning section that doesn't exist on the one you moved in time anymore. So ultimately, the shape of the wave, except for the very, very beginning, all right, the shape of the wave does end up the same, whether you just delayed the signal or altered the phase of the signal. Once you're a little bit of time into that wave, those two things do look the same. But the phase knob hasn't moved it over in time. It begins the process earlier, and then by the time they line up, they look the same. So it is, when you're envisioning, like, do the time delay and the phase do the exact same thing? Well, a little bit after the very beginning of the wave, yes, they do. But at the very beginning of the wave, the time one has just moved it over in time, whereas the phase one has moved the starting position. You can think of it that way.
All right. Who do we have left?
We have Chad B, David F, and Brandon N. We'll answer you next week with a special guest host.
To be announced. I also just got an email from Kef, and Kef's saying that launching on July 15th and running through August 3rd, they will be discounting their LS50 and LS50W speakers. They will be $1,000 and $2,000 respectively. So,
okay. LS50s are on sale.
All
right. And so, yes, next week, we're going to have a special guest co-host. Haven't lined that up yet, but I'll figure out something. And then the week after that, the week of July the 22nd, we'll probably be recording on July the 24th. Richard from the Home On podcast and from the Entertainment 2.0 podcast over at the Digital Media Zone, he will be my guest co-host for sure. Josh might also join us, the other co-host from Entertainment 2.0, but Josh isn't sure if he'll be able to make it. But Richard will be there for sure. Richard is a home automation expert, so all of your questions about home automation, get those into us, and Richard and I will answer them on July the 24th.
Anybody who's got to want to put their gear in a different room should be asking their questions now. All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Johan, Nick, and Chad for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation. And we want to thank our 82 patrons over at patreon.com, including James.
Yeah, Johan, Nick, and Chad, thank you very much for your PayPal donations. Thanks to our 82 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. James, thanks for being one of those patrons.
I want to thank James for the trifecta of support. He gave us a PayPal donation. He was one of our patrons and also sent us an Amazon gift card. Thank you very much.
That's right, James. Thanks for those Amazon gift cards as well. We love the support. Thank you.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.